This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code listen50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code listen50. T's and C's apply.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend and esteemed colleague, the Chairman of the Suffolk County Republican Party and the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party here in New York, Jesse Garcia. Welcome back, Jesse. We're on for another good show.
It's good to be here, Your Honor.
So, what's going on? I mean, so much, as Cassimatidis would say, and as we say every night in Katz and Cosby, there's so much going on in the world. But I want to focus our attention on America's campuses exploding. And what we have here is you have an epidemic of anti-Semitism, hate speech, physical threats, intimidation, suppression of free speech, and weakness of college officials. I think this is an enormous, enormous problem, and the implications for America going forward, not just in the present time, but the future of America, are, in my opinion, enormous. You know, the ancient hatred of anti-Semitism has gone on hundreds, maybe thousands of years, but now it's been legitimized by the left-wing progressives and the Islamists, and you have this strange alliance between the Islamists and the left-wing progressives. It seems to me as Lenin and Stalin would call them, the useful idiots on the college campus, don't know yet if that as Islamists took over and controlled a country, the first thing they'd do is start throwing people off rooftops who disagreed with them or didn't share their worldview or happened to be gay or lesbian or a different religious sect. So they don't know what they're talking about. So you have this virulent anti-Semitism. They try to say, well, it's not about Jew hatred, it's about being anti-Israel. But if you look at the signs on the campuses, and the language being shot, it's obviously about anti-Semitism as well, because when you have signs saying, kill Jews, bring them to the guillotine, send them back to Poland, and they're doing this on American campuses against Jewish American students, you're not talking just about a difference in policy about Israel, Jesse. And this has been accomplished with physical threats, blocking kids from going into to classes, entering the campus, physical intimidation because they block entrance. So it's physical intimidation. You can't call it a peaceful protest, Jesse, when you have physical intimidation blocking people from going in and out. They suppress any other divergent point of view. Free speech, only for them, not for anybody else. It's manifested by the weakness of college officials. So let's be very, very clear. The time to nip this fascistic, dictatorial presence on our college campuses is when it begins. You don't negotiate with these people because you're negotiating with terrorists who are seizing control of college campuses. You do not negotiate with them, you remove them. They have no right to block other people from going to school. Unfortunately, Columbia University, a place where you're supposed to have academic freedom and full and fair discussion of issues, it's been taken over by the crazy left. And because of that and the physical intimidation and the anti-Semitism and the violent protests there, where they took over a building and they literally forced janitors into submission and pushed them and held them captive for a while. And Alan Dershowitz is now helping to bring lawsuits against them on this. And there's a coalition of lawyers who can be working on this. This is very, very dangerous. This is how the fascists in the 1930s in Germany and other Nazi groups, for example, in Austria and other fifth columnists in European countries, that's how they operated. Intimidation, physical, isolation, marginalization, physical intimidation, actual violence, weakness of officials to fight back. So we have a reminiscent problem of what happened in the 1930s. And the campuses are exploding. And these campuses, Jesse, are fully funded by these not-for-profit groups that get tax benefits and exemptions. Foreign money pours in. American money, like the Soros Foundation or some of their groups, some of the Rockefeller Foundation, even some Goldman Sachs types, even certain strange Jewish people like the Pritzkers or the Feldmans and others throw money into this, which seems to me the most masochistic thing that Jews can do, because when the terror starts and the death starts and they start marching Jews into gas chambers, they don't distinguish, Jesse, between the Orthodox Jews and the Ralph Lauren secular Jews. They just push everybody into that. And that's our problem. These campuses are exploding today, and it's not being addressed. You have to knock them out early. You do not negotiate with them. You hold them accountable. You charge them criminally. You expel them from campus. You suspend their ability to be on campus totally. What say you?
I completely agree with you, Your Honor, because what we're seeing here today on our college campuses is, number one, just like COVID allowed parents to see how their high school and middle school kids were being taught when they were being taught at home. They saw an indoctrination going on there. I think this is a self-fulfilling prophecy from these colleges, because they've not been teaching at our colleges and our universities. They've been trying to indoctrinate at our colleges and our universities, basically on how America should be ashamed of itself and so on and so forth. I agree with you. This is nothing more. This is what was being chanted, what was being done, the violence that was being perpetrated on these campuses was nothing about the First Amendment, was all about violence and the protection and the public safety matter. The poster child on how not to deal with the appeasement of students was the Columbia University, and how they, for 9 to 10 days, appeased and coddled these demonstrators and continued to move the red line. And what happened? Finally, the administrators there had to call in those brave men and women of the New York City Police Department, and we saw it in real time as they climbed into those buildings. What we did learn is that even other universities learned from those mistakes and didn't have to go through the mistake of Columbia University, the University of Texas at Austin, even Fordham and Stony Brook University here. Once these protesters did impinged on the rights of other students or made hateful speech and became violent, they took swift action. And that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it should be. And you touched upon this. Let's talk a little bit about it. I know we were going to discuss maybe as part of this segment, migrants from Gaza being moved, being allowed to be brought into the United States by the Biden administration. But let's speak more about who's funding these people. You pointed out accurately, we believe that there is foreign money fueling these groups. We do know that there's groups like the Rockefeller Foundation. We do know about the Soros group. But you point forward. I accurately pointed out to the Pritzker family. The Pritzker family, just for those people of our listeners who may not be familiar with, they are the family that owns the Hyatt Hotel Corporation.
And the governor of Illinois is a Pritzker.
It's a Pritzker. And FEC, this is what I love about transparency. Democrats always clamor for transparency, except when they get exposed. Several House Democrats who are facing tough reelection fights are receiving money from the foundation and the Pritzker family. But you know who else is getting money from these groups that are funding these protests? The Pritzkers founded a group called the Libra Foundation, and that group funds smaller, more narrow focused not-for-profits. There are groups like Climate Justice Alliance, who have criticized President Biden. Another one is Black Organizing for Leadership and Dignity, and according to Politico, has promoted anti-Israel demonstrations And another is the Immigration Defense Project, which has participated and funded protests in D.C. again, which led to a number of arrests and involved anti-Israel type of demonstrations. What I don't understand is that American people need to wake up. These are not the ideological or philosophical demonstrations and protests of the civil rights or the 1930s and such that would shepherd, or maybe against, whether it was, I don't agree with their protests about the Vietnam, but those protests in Vietnam. These are funded for the exact purpose of engaging in anti-Semitism and in splitting and dividing this country from within, creating chaos on our campuses that then will spill out into our communities, and basically make America and its very weak leadership with the Biden administration make it a less of a player or less effective on the global stage. This is obviously this coordinated financial effort to create an anti-Semitic narrative in America, which Americans don't subscribe to. We do not. We are a friend of our dear ally Israel, always will be. But they're trying to chip away at that through this false narrative that they're funding with George Soros and others, so that it weakens even further a weak president on the global stage.
Well, that's very well said. See, the problem is that you can't take this stuff out of context. So the very same people who were funding and the professional organizers, the outside agitators who were doing this work, the same people who did the Occupy Wall Street so-called protests way back when, followed by the Black Lives Matter and Antifa protests of 2020. They were ruling by intimidation. They were trying to get their way by force. This is not free and open discussion and debate. This is not a free speech issue. This is the worst kind of fascist behavior. And what fascist behavior is whether it comes from the left or it comes from the right, it's a suppression of civil liberties, of civil rights. It's all about intimidation. It's all about beating down your opponent so that they submit. And I suggest to you that when college officials refuse to confront this and have mealy-mouthed explanations, then please, all you're doing is emboldening them. And the more you delay forceful action against them, the more their demands increase. So, for example, in the Wall Street Journal today, the president of the University of Chicago writes a self-serving op-ed piece, and he congratulates himself in the most wonderful terms for allowing them to speak, and we negotiated with them for a while, but then we took strong action. No, Mr. President of the University of Chicago, you allowed them to take hold for a week on your campus to intimidate others, to create a hostile environment, and you allowed it to spread and to foster, till ultimately you had to take charge. As soon as you start saying people who are blockading entrances and exits, buildings, as soon as you allow them to occupy tent cities, as soon as you allow that to happen, you are giving in to the forces of tyranny and oppression. And this is not coincidental, Jesse, and this is the whole problem. And you alluded to it, and you couldn't be more correct. These are funded, these are organized, these are disciplined radicals who want to take down our system. There are no coincidences that the day after October 7th, when the people of Israel, which, by the way, had not just Israeli citizens and Jews killed and kidnapped and tortured and savagely beaten, not just Jews and Israelis, but people from all over the world were there, and they too were captured and killed and kidnapped. So let's
not forget, there are still American hostages that have not been returned.
Exactly. Exactly. Where's the moral leadership of Mr. Biden? So the short answer about this is the signs were out there, the tents were out there within a day or two all across the country in hundreds of campuses. There's no such thing as a coincidence, Jesse. When they already have the placards printed, the tents ordered, they're being delivered. Why? And please tell me why it is that when people are doing a so-called peaceful protest, that they need handcuffs, ties to go in when they're going onto the campus. Will you please tell me?
Or how about professional agitators as amongst them, paid for to inflame the situation and guide them? If you're protesting a situation, you should know that you're protesting what you're protesting for. They don't.
Well, that's true. They don't know what they're doing. They're being used, again, using an expression that the communists used, whether it was Lenin and Stalin. These people are useful idiots. They're looking for a cause. This is their cause. But what they're doing is they're causing enormous threats from the inside in this country. And I'll make this point as we conclude this segment. It's what you and I have been talking about previously. There is a fifth column in America. We have these movements inside America where these people are not just anti-Israel or anti-Jewish. They are anti-America. These people are chanting death to Israel, death to America. They were talking about death to our constitutional system, death to our freedoms, death to human dignity and respect for your fellows. That's what they're chanting about. These people are supporting terrorism. This is not about the Palestinians. This is about terrorism. The biggest terrorists in the world are suppressing their own people, that is the Palestinians. They are under the control of Hamas. And unfortunately, for one reason or another, 70% of the Palestinians in Gaza, as well as the Palestinians on the West Bank, support Hamas. So don't tell me about the innocent Palestinians. We'll get to that in the next segment, but there is this fifth column in America. We need to address it. We need to confront it before this cancer destroys America, Jesse. We'll be back in a moment. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Out having fun, but the background noise makes hearing impossible? Your friend just cracked a joke, but you completely missed it.
And then, immediately ordered tacos.
Discover Nuance Audio, the new invisible hearing solution that's built into your glasses. Discreet, comfortable, and easy to use. Nuance Audio glasses help you hear better and reduce annoying background noise so you can focus on the conversations that matter. Find a store near you at nuanceaudio.com.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the New York State Republican Party, as well as the County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse, as we were closing out the first segment of our show, you had some more thoughts that you wanted to bring to our listeners' attention.
Just wanted to point out, Your Honor, that, this wokeism and this indoctrination that is being perpetuated in our colleges, our universities, and now down into our high schools and middle schools. Now at the college level, it's come to, it's turning around. The snake is coming back to bite these leaders. It's amazing. In Stony Brook, we had Stony Brook University, we had demonstrations. When it became violent, the president there took immediate action. 29 individuals were arrested and 20 students received interim suspensions. I think those should be full suspensions or expulsions for what they did. However, what I find it amazing is that, since the Obama administration, they've been trying to indoctrinate and take over academia and over this wokeism and this counterculture. It's come back to bite them, because now these faculty students, a Senate has voted in Stony Brook to demand that the charges be dropped against these students and faculty members who were arrested during last week's protests. They also are taking on the leadership in all these colleges. The issue here is, if you did not indoctrinate, if you did not infuse this wokeism and this cancel culture into the educational system, you would not be having this problem. It would not easily be fanned. And now their same tools that they've been using is being turned around on them, so that there should be no law and order. So everyone, these 29 people who were arrested, faculty and students, should just be released. No consequence. That's wrong. And you can see how woke they've become when the faculty senate votes at Stony Brook University to drop these charges.
Well, it's ridiculous, because the whole point of civil disobedience is to confront the system but take the consequences of your action. That's what Martin Luther King did. That's what Gandhi did in India when he's fighting the British Empire for independence for India, when King was fighting for the civil rights movement. You acted, you demonstrated. If you broke the law, you took the consequences, and you never cried about, I need a vegetarian meal or more water, that the kids at Columbia were doing. They want it both ways.
I can tell you, you're right. And people who say that, why should it be our business? I'll tell you why it's our business. And this I don't understand. Why Ivy League colleges, with their big foundations and their endowments, need federal money is beyond me. So my federal tax dollars, $1.2 billion is sent to Columbia. Penn received approximately $955 million. Harvard received $6.6 million federal dollars. Princeton, another $403 million. Yale, $776.8 million. This is unreal. These are our own tax dollars being used for protests, to fuel protests that basically say death to America and death to Israel. And that's wrong. And we should put a stop to these big colleges with big endowments receiving this type of money. I bet those monies could be better used in our high school and our middle school and our elementary classrooms.
Well, let me say a couple things. Number one, I think any university that doesn't enforce the rules of university and provide that people who want an education can do so free of intimidation or a hostile environment, if they're not moving quickly to dispatch these terrorist protesters, if they're not effectively dealing with this, I believe every parent has a right to sue for a rebate of their tuition. At the Columbia tuition,
absolutely.
Columbia tuition could be, I don't know, $80,000 or $90,000 a year. So you multiply times 4. My God, the numbers are staggering. They're entitled to have their money back. That's number one. Number two, any universities getting federal money, as you correctly point out, should have that rescinded. No more federal money to them until they act responsibly to protect the innocent students who want an education. Number three, any of these organized groups that are funded and these not-for-profits, they should have their tax exemptions rescinded, and there should be lawsuits against them to break them up and to compensate the universities and the cities for having to use the police to break these things up. You have to have a multifaceted counterattack, make it painful to them to do this, because they're spending money all over the place. Now, where does the money come from? You and I discussed in the first segment, it's coming internally, but it's also, Jesse, coming externally. It's coming from the Middle Eastern oil-rich countries. They are fostering all kinds of crazy studies on campuses that are really indoctrination agents, and they're buying off the administrations with tens and hundreds of millions of dollars. That's number one. Number two, all the students that are coming in here from the Middle East, for example, these foreign students who are here on student visas, they're paying full freight on tuitions. Another way of buying off the universities, because it helps the universities pay their expenses. So they fund these programs in these departments, and they get the payment of full tuition. Fundamentally, they're driving universities to capitulate because of the economic pressure and investments. This is absolutely wrong. And to go back to another point you made, it's all about indoctrination. But the problem, Jesse, as you've pointed out many times, the indoctrination is not just at the universities. The indoctrination starts earlier. It starts in the public schools. It starts in the elementary schools, where they try with the wokeism, the critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, all this other intellectual nonsense. The whole 1619 project fostered by the New York Times about somehow America's developed based on racism, and it's all about racism. All of these things have indoctrinated kids at the earliest age. So by the time they get to the university, Jesse, they're primed there. And by the way, you know the percentage of conservative or traditionalist professors and administrators on campus versus the left wing? It's a fraction. If it's 10 or 15 or 20%, that's a big number. What say you, Jesse?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how much more I can agree with you on that, because you're absolutely right. It's indoctrination, it's just wokeism, and it's just funding. I think that we do need, let's not just forget also for our listeners, that under the Obama-Biden administration, their IRS went after conservative-leaning not-for-profits, whether you want to call them the Tea Party or those who are interested in the life matter, the lower taxes, smaller government. They went after their tax statuses. And I still say to you, Your Honor, that the same rules that they applied to those individuals need to be applied to these people who have actually done the wrong things. In the times
That's a big
Obama,
difference, yeah. Jesse, that's exactly right. The difference between what was happening when Lois Lerner using the IRS as a political weapon against conservative voices, there was no bad action on the part of the people she was suppressing. But this is totally different. You're absolutely right, Jesse.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we need to apply the law fairly, with transparency and evenly, and blindly with no partisanship here. But we're not going to get that out of this administration. They have been getting into our schools slowly and assuredly. And it was only there was one good thing that came out of COVID, is that parents and other family members were able to see what was being taught in their high schools, in their public schools, and what was being taught in their colleges.
I want to shift gears, Jesse. I want to talk to you about another issue, which I find deeply troubling, and it just shows to me the absolute stupidity of the Biden administration policies. I want to say this to you. Just when you thought that America couldn't hurt America, that Biden could not hurt our country more, he comes up with this insane idea that he's going to bring Gazan migrants into the United States of America by the thousands and give them a free ride on a path to citizenship. How do you bring people in who have declared death to America, death to Israel, who fight against Western civilization, have no commitment to our values, our institutions, have no respect for the rule of law or for the views of their neighbors? How do you allow those people to come in here? Don't we have enough problems with these homegrown dangers, the domestic threat? Why are you importing people that you know are inherently suspect because of the way they conducted themselves and continue to conduct themselves? What is Biden thinking about, Jesse?
I don't know what he's thinking, but I will tell you what he's doing, because I don't believe he really has the thoughts. These are the plans of others. He is doing everything he can to appease the ultra-left progressive wing of his party, the squad members, because he is concerned about losing Michigan. He is concerned about losing key states in the electoral map. Unfortunately for all Americans and all of our allies, the American president, Joe Biden, is running the government not based on national security, economic security, energy security, or the security of its people. He is basing it on an electoral map, which places us in an even dangerous position. It's unbelievable that we were going to be allowing, protesters who sympathize with the death to America and death to Israel asylum here. You know what? I don't even understand why they need this type of program. They can just cross the north or southern border, without impunity and walk over the line like everybody else is. We have potential terror cells coming across. We have the cartel. We have human trafficking. We've done nothing to close our borders on the southern side or any border whatsoever under the Biden administration. It's been a big, wide open gate, if there is anything at all of a gate. This is nothing more than continued political appeasement that is and will place internally our country at risk.
Well, it's a national security issue. If you don't know who's coming in and you can't vet them properly, and who are you going to check their credentials with? Hamas? I mean, really, the whole thing is ridiculous. Hamas controls Gaza. You're going to let Gazans into the United States by the thousands, and how are you going to know who they are? How do you possibly screen these people? I mean, it's insane. It is one of the worst ideas. You add that to the open border policies that let in millions and millions of people we don't know, that have created the fentanyl crisis, the cartel crisis, the threats to America of more terrorism. You let all of this in, and now you want to add the Gazans in? I mean, really, Joe Biden? Are you totally out of your mind? Speaking about another bad policy, again, based on my refrain, just when you thought Biden couldn't hurt America more, he aimed more and more policies, Jesse's, and regulations that destroy American energy independence. They want to cut off Alaskan drilling. They want to drain our strategic petroleum reserves, Jesse. They want to mandate green energy goals that are unrealizable and destructive. They want to stop drilling. They want to stop natural gas. They will not allow Alaska, which is a great source of energy. They can't produce, but we have to get our energy from Venezuela or from Iran or Russia. I mean, are we totally crazy? This weakens the United States internally. We're not going to be able to fulfill these unattainable mandates. The infrastructure will break down. People will freeze to death or be overheated in summers with no air conditioning. Cars will not be able to move. Hospitals will not be able to function when the infrastructure goes down. I mean, what is wrong with this man when he's mandating more and more? He's going to get rid of all gas-powered cars by 2030, 2035. Whether you want an electric car or not, you're going to have to get an electric car. Now, isn't that ridiculous? And that's not going to achieve anything. Even Kerry, the brainchild of this climate nonsense, even he admits that even if we become totally electric, it's not going to indent at all the climate at all. He's admitted that time after time after time. So why are they doing this, Jesse?
They're doing this for cheap political stunts and cheap political support. From day one of his presidency, Joe Biden set this country down, economic collapse, national security collapse, and the ability of providing and being energy independent. On the day one when he struck down the Keystone pipeline, it was a key ingredient of leading America to coming forth and being energy independent. So we did not have to deal with countries, allies, and foes in the Middle East, and certainly did not have to deal with a country in the Western Hemisphere like Venezuela, going to them to basically beg for oil reserves.
And Venezuelan oil is dirty oil.
It's dirty oil.
And it's dirty oil. Our oil is much cleaner.
Ended fracking, ended everything ended natural gas, which we have great deposits on. And listen, he basically reversed the successful energy policies of the Trump administration. He did it for politics. I get that. But then to double down on cheap politics with cheap science that's not even verified is even worse. And he does that with his governor cohorts in California, Hochul in New York, Pritzker in Illinois, and others that are saying now we're mandating that school buses have to be eliminated from gasoline. By 2026 or 2028, those school buses need to be electric. School board officials are going crazy. The administrations of school districts here in the public school districts are clamoring because a school bus that you buy today that is energy efficient and gasoline powered, say it's $100,000. An electric bus is $330,000. Imagine who's going to get stuck paying for that. Not the federal government. They're giving it to Columbia to the tune of $1.2 billion. It's the taxpayers and the small businesses in those districts that are going to be paying higher taxes for this. Another thing, you can't build new construction in New York or anywhere in Biden's world with natural gas. Everything's got to be electric. Well, shouldn't that be a choice? We haven't even had the power grid to support these high, lofty mandates that, for one reason or another, I think some political consultant picked out of the date and said, okay, in 2026, we need to be here with our base, and that's when the mandate will kick in. And that happens here in New York, it happens in Washington, and it happens in places like California and Illinois.
Well, these are very troubling issues. We're going to have to take a break, and we'll continue in a moment with Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us.
This is Let the Record Show.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
My favorite thing about Shipt since I signed up for Target Circle 360? No price markups when I order same-day delivery from tons of local stores. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. I won't lie, I've had too much fun being like, markups on groceries? Not in my fridge. Markups on pet food? Not for my DOG. Markups on tools, electronics, home goods, meds? Not in my house. Anyway, it's awesome. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. Welcome back. I'm with Chairman Jesse Garcia, the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Jesse is the House Republican on this show. I'm the House Democrat. But let me submit to you, I am so disappointed and disheartened about the trend of the Democratic Party in the United States, in the city of New York and the state of New York. Let me submit to you, Jesse, as follows. The Democratic Party in this city of New York, in this state of New York, and in this country of the United States of America has lost its integrity and its moral compass. What do I mean by that? They are caving to the radical left. They're attacking our constitutional system. They believe in things like packing the Supreme Court when they can't get their way through elections. They want to abolish the filibuster, which will establish majority tyrannies. They want to weaponize the prosecutorial and judicial functions, and you see that with Trump. They want to abolish electoral college, which means that every election will be determined by a few handful of Democratic blue states, California and New York and Illinois, for example, which to me is very, very troubling since I don't like the drift of their public policies. I don't like what's happening to their economy. I don't like about the suppression of individual choice in those blue states. And they're going to make the blue states dominant in this country by eliminating the electoral college. They don't know their history. They don't know their Federalist Papers. They don't understand what the Constitution is about. It's about balancing and checking majority tyranny and having common shared values. This is the most ridiculous thing in the world. It's about compromise, and they want to foster the abolition of the electoral college. That means the only votes that will count to the people in California, New York, and Illinois, and a couple of other blue states, which will be a majority tyranny by the blue states over everybody else in this country. So what are your thoughts about this loss of integrity and moral compass, Jesse?
This is not the same Democratic Party. This is a party that has been hijacked from the progressive left. It is, as you pointed out, one that is grounded in one and with a foundation of one thing: power. Power that will lead to influence on the global stage, domestically, and greed to enrich ourselves. We want to talk about the moral problems the Democratic Party has. All you have to do is look at the scandal after scandal in the city of New York and its Democratic overwhelming leadership there. The scandals up with the Hochul administration and the Cuomo administration before that, and the Spitzer administration before that one. It's just grounded in that type of corruption because they are seated in one way. They want to have the ultimate power, so they have the ultimate influence over the lives of the masses, and they drown out individualism, and they want to drown out the American exceptionalism that we have. But there are obstacles to that. There are obstacles in the governance of Republican administrations in states and in counties and in legislatures throughout the country and throughout the region, quite frankly. You know, just this week, again, the legislature, for the third time, starting with redistricting and starting with other referendums, a Supreme Court has thrown out Proposition 1 in the state of New York for this year, which they are trying to use as a political tool to drive up turnout. Really what it is basically codifying the woke agenda in the state of New York.
And using something that seems benign, Equal Rights Amendment.
Exactly, which is not. Equal Rights Amendment was a real movement that was successful in the 1960s and 1970s. And we can see that now with everything that has transpired. But what's here is that we can see that the Democrats, when they're not successful at the ballot box or they're not successful in policy because they get thrown out of court, they change the rules of the game. And in doing that, they're really hurting the voter. They're hurting a small business on Main Street. They're hurting a family, but they're enriching themselves. And this is why I keep saying that the further they lurch to the left, the better it is for people in my side of the business, the Republican side, because we can talk about freedom, liberty, life. We can talk about American entrepreneurism and American exceptionalism. We can talk about putting criminals in jail and supporting cops and judges and prosecutors, where it's the other way around, and people are feeling that in real time. This Democrat Party is corrupt from Albany and Washington down. It's corrupt because of their own greed and their own need for power and influence.
Well, wait a second. Let's not forget, since we're a national show, Jesse, let's not forget whatever happened to the Biden family corruption scandals. You don't hear about it. I mean, please, Jesse. I mean, you have an institutionalization of grifting by the Biden family. The son, the brother, maybe Joe Biden himself. You don't see anything happening there. Where's the prosecution? You had tainted U.S. attorneys, Weiss. They make him a special prosecutor, a special counsel. And what does he do? All he does is try to sandbag a real investigation and try to let Junior Hunter off the hook when there's no doubt that what they were doing was with influence peddling and being paid tens of millions of dollars for no expertise, no services, no nothing. Where did this money go and where did it come from? And why haven't we heard anything from the FBI and the Justice Department on this? Why is this being suppressed? It's like the laptop from 2020. Oh, please don't pay attention to the fact that it showed the corruption of Hunter Biden, and he was drug addicted, and he was doing all these deals, and he was totally incapable of providing any services, yet they were giving tens of millions of dollars to this guy. I mean, it's ridiculous. And yet, this corruption scandal involving that family, that self-dealing family, is totally and absolutely suppressed. When's the last time you saw an article on that? When's the last time you heard about it on the radio or on television, Jesse? It's amazing.
It is amazing, and I think that and obviously that the administration, and it is a double-edged sword. The Biden administration is, I'm sure, breathing with a sigh of relief that the Hunter Biden laptop and criminal case is not on the forefront of people's minds. That the impeachment inquiry is not on the forefront of anybody's mind right now. But the double-edged sword is they're not winning because they're appeasing the left on the issue involving the Israeli-Palestinian war in the Gaza. They're losing on both fronts. And the Hunter Biden laptop and criminal case is still sitting out there. I read somewhere, and I wish I could find the source, that Hunter Biden is doing everything he can to avoid the commencement of his tax case in the jurisdiction that's holding it. And again, they do not want to bring these issues to the forefront. And I think that, one of the things that we have to have, and I've always believed, I think one of the reasons why the Republican Party has been successful in Suffolk County, Long Island, and throughout the region is because we do have an educated consumer. We have an educated voter base here in our region, and they can see and depict through what is wrong and what is right. And what they can all see here is the Biden administration placing its thumb on the scales of justice for political purposes, whether it be in their own case or whether it be with their partners in Atlanta, which has been exposed in the Trump trial, the Trump case there involving election interference, and certainly in the Trump hush money case here in New York, where, as you know, and you're a judge and you're a counsel, Your Honor, one of the things that you can tell they were desperate in the Trump case in New York. Alvin Bragg's case in New York was on its last legs when they tried to make the case more salacious than based on the breaking of laws.
Well, that's very interesting, Jesse. So let's talk about the Trump trial here in New York. And they're on a break today. So let's just talk about this. As I've said before, this is a case never should have been brought. There was no violation here of law. This DA has no jurisdiction to go after a so-called violation of federal campaign finance law. They brought in a hotshot hired gun, number 3 guy in the Justice Department, Colangelo, to be lead counsel on this case. He, by the way, made money as a political consultant for the Democratic Party. The woman who put Stormy Daniels on the stand and examined her was also a contributor to the Democratic Party. I mean, the obvious corruption and taint of a fair and impartial prosecutorial function. You're talking about events that occurred forever ago, before the election of 2016. And he goes after it now. Why? The timing was to embarrass and humiliate President Trump. That's what it was about. It was to tie him up in court so he couldn't go out and campaign. And it was to trick people who otherwise vote for Donald Trump and campaign for him, saying, well, he just got convicted of a crime, therefore he must be bad, and losing a certain percentage. And the number is estimated now, Jesse, about 4% of voters he'd otherwise have. But if there's a conviction, it's no go. They won't vote for him anymore. Even though
but Your Honor, if I could interrupt
Sure.
for a moment, because you sat as on the bench. I was always told that when a case was going bad for the prosecution, that they would create this dust-up to basically put testimony in front of the jury that would cast the defendant in bad light. And in fact, this past week, even the judge admitted that he lost control of the courtroom during the Stormy Daniels direct examination. You know, much of what the prosecutors are bringing out had nothing to do with the case. It was nothing. I mean, did Donald Trump have sex? Maybe he didn't. Did Donald Trump have issues in the past? Maybe he didn't. But it was not germane to this case whatsoever. I mean, when you saw that as a judge and you were there playing referee, how would you feel when you saw if this case was being put before you?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I want to give you an honorary law degree, Jesse, because you're absolutely correct. That testimony of Stormy Daniels, as we say in the law business, was irrelevant and immaterial. It never should have been allowed, period. That woman should never have been on the stand, period. The judge, Mershon, never should have allowed it because it has no relevance and materiality to the charges against him, even though you don't even know what the crime is because it was never spelled out in the indictment, even though the state constitution requires that. So this is unconstitutional prosecution in a lot of ways. There's so many, listen, this is the problem, Jesse. There's so many errors committed by this prosecution. There's so many errors committed by this judge. And ultimately, if you have a fair appellate bench, they will reverse this. But the problem is when you reverse a conviction, God forbid, against Trump, it may be much too little, much too late because the harm is done to a fair election. This is clear election interference. So, for example, they want to talk about campaign finance law. Mershon, the judge, won't even allow an expert to be put in on a part of the defense about what the campaign finance law says and how it works. So he allowed people, including accountants who know nothing about this stuff, to talk about violation of campaign finance law, but they're not the experts. But if you're going to allow them to talk about the alleged violation of campaign finance law, why aren't you letting the defense do it? Totally unhanded characterizations by...
May I ask you a question,
Sure.
just to interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
Why could the Trump lawyers have sought an appeal to that in the middle of this trial allow?
No, that's the problem.
Okay.
Problem is that's what they call an interlocutory appeal, and they wouldn't allow it. The appellate courts wouldn't do that. That's the problem. The problem is the courtroom is controlled by Judge Mershon, and Mershon has made one ruling after another. He's letting stuff in that shouldn't be in. He's denying Trump the opportunity to put in an effective cross-examination by bringing his own experts on campaign finance law. He's allowing the prosecution, if Trump takes the stand, Jesse, to be cross-examined by some findings that were made by Engoron in the Tish James case, which is another fabricated nonsense case, where Engoron found Trump to be untruthful. The fact of the matter is that should not be allowed in at all. Every good trial judge, and I did this as a criminal court judge and a Supreme Court justice, every time you're dealing with a ruling on evidence, Jesse, you have to balance the probative value of proving the charges against a person versus the prejudicial impact. Probative value versus prejudicial impact. Mershon is ruled consistently against the defense, consistently in favor of the prosecution. He has tainted this trial. When there was a motion for a mistrial, he denied it. He even acknowledged from the bench that the prosecution had overreached. At that time, he should have declared a mistrial. Now, I can't say how to handle this as a defense lawyer, what I would do with this. You can only work with the parameters of what's going on in the courtroom. And, you know, one of the things Mershon said is, well, you didn't object enough. Excuse me, you had a pretrial ruling that you couldn't go after that because I'm allowing it in. And they made a couple of objections, but if you're a defense counsel, if you keep objecting, you alienate the jury. And anybody who's ever tried a case, whether as a judge or as a lawyer or both, knows you can't keep interrupting with objections because that works against you. So Marchand is a sophisticated former prosecutor and a judge. He knows that. So when he makes that comment, well, you didn't object enough. Well, why'd you let it in the first place, Judge Marchand? You shouldn't have. And when they moved for a mistrial, he should have granted it. Okay? Now, let's not forget another ruling he made. He denied them a change of venue. How do you get a fair trial for a guy like Trump, who is vilified and hated by a substantial number of people in the jury pool? Some 85% of the people in New York City do not like Donald Trump. Okay? So how are you going to get a fair trial when your jury pool is that tainted to begin with? That case should have been moved out of New York County, period. No discussion at all. So I am deeply troubled by the way this case is going. I would hope that there's at least one juror on that panel who will say, I will not go along with this kangaroo court. I will not vote to convict and have a hung jury. Now, I would never give advice to a lawyer to act inappropriately, but in a hypothetical, Jesse, a way that a defense lawyer can do this, again, hypothetically, I'm not recommending you do that because I would never suggest this, but if you had a gutsy defense lawyer, when he does his summation, will say something to the effect of, you heard testimony from an accountant about the campaign finance law, but we weren't allowed to put in this by the court's rulings, but our own experts. Now, at that time, if that happened, the presiding judge will go absolutely berserk, rule them out of order, and chastise them and probably hold them in contempt. Okay? But that's setting up for an appeal, and just maybe, Marchand will then realize, by having done that, he should now grant a mistrial at that point. But of course, I would never urge a defense lawyer to do that because that would be inappropriate. But I'm saying that's a hypothetical because they have to look at what they can do since they've been so suppressed from defending Donald Trump effectively by a judge. And in the words of Andy McCarthy, a great commentator and a former assistant U.S. attorney of great renown, he said, this judge and all his rulings has been guiding the prosecution's case and the jury to conviction of Donald Trump. And this is a taint on the whole system. It's a disgrace. This has been Let the Record Show. Jesse, I want to thank you again for another interesting show. I look forward to being with you again next week. So signing off for Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Happy Mother's Day to everyone.
And happy Mother's Day to everyone. Thank you.
Let the Record Show is on the air.